Governor Tom Wolf's budget proposal has caused quite a stir around the state on a number of fronts. One of them is education, where he has proposed a 30% increase in funding driven primarily by severance tax on the natural gas industry. State Representative Kristin Phillips-Hill from the 93rd Legislative District is here to discuss the Wolf proposal, which, correct, Representative, is nothing more than a proposal at this point.
Correct. Right? It is a proposal. We are in the process of holding appropriations hearings in the House from, they started March 9th. They will go through March 26th. And today I had the opportunity to hear Secretary nominee Pedro Rivera for the Department of Education testify before the committee.
I want to talk about some of his testimony a bit. I want to bring up, first of all, a chart that shows some of the funding. Obviously, if there are increases, the money has to come from somewhere, and we're showing that right now. For some of these things, it sounds like we're simply throwing money at some of these problems. Would you agree or disagree with that? I
would agree with that. What I heard today is we just want to put more money into an antiquated and irrelevant system that's really not meeting the needs of students, particularly in schools that are really struggling. So I was hoping to hear more vision. I was hoping to hear something new. There was a lot of conversation about accountability and improving education, but there were really no concrete measures specified on how we're going to get there, other than spending more money.
What are some of the other things you heard from the secretary-to-be, I should say?
Well, I think one of the things that concern me the most is that we looked at a lot of new numbers. From what I can gather, there'll be a $21 million increase in taxes on the people who live in the 5 school districts that are either all or partially in the 93rd district. And there's really nothing new in place to hold taxes down. So if a school district can cut those taxes at the school district level, other than the existing Act 1 index, there's really not much that's going to help them continue to hold those taxes down. And at the same time, we're going to see a big increase in the personal income tax and the sales tax.
There are a lot of similarities, I think, in the education issue between education and healthcare, in that you have cost drivers that many would say you really have to address before you go about doing other things, and they can be a fix as well. What are the cost drivers that he is or isn't talking about?
Well, you know, if you talk to school board directors and superintendents, they're going to tell you that the biggest cost driver for them are pensions. And so what's happened in this budget is that the pensions have been put into a special separate account, separate from the education budget. And I think that the reality is that the teacher is the most important part of delivering educational content to students. So to take the pensions out and say that's not really part of education funding, I think is disingenuous. I think that we need to put it back into the education budget. We need to look at dollars for dollars, apples to apples, to make that comparison and make sure that we address that. March 24th, the State Government Committee in the House will start to address the pension issue.
I want to talk a little about property taxes as well. Now, I know that isn't an education issue so much as it is a revenue issue.
Right.
But property taxes were addressed by the governor in his proposal, and obviously that's a hot button topic in the 93rd. What do you think about his plans for property taxes?
I'm glad that the governor recognizes that property taxes are a huge problem, particularly in York County and the 93rd district. What the governor is proposing is not a dollar for dollar reduction in people's property taxes. So that money, part of that money that's going to be generated from the personal income tax is going to go to property tax reduction. The other part's going to go into the general fund. So people will actually see an increase in the amount of taxes that they pay overall, not a decrease.
What are you hearing from the people in your district who've heard about this so far?
I'm hearing a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern about what's being taxed. There's a lot of concern about their taxes are going up instead of going down. You know,
their overall taxes, you mean?
Correct, their overall tax. So there'll be a small reduction in their property tax, but they're going to have a bigger increase in their income tax and their sales tax. And I guess the silver lining in my rain cloud is that at least there was a recognition on the part of the secretary nominee that mandates are a huge cost driver for school districts, and that when asked why it's really difficult for school districts to cut administrative costs, he pointed to those mandates. And as you know, I have a piece of legislation that would prohibit the state from imposing unfunded mandates onto public schools. And I certainly would hope that it would be something that the governor and the secretary nominee would look upon favorably to help them reduce costs.
That's part of the answer to my last question here.
Oh,
obviously,
well, good.
No, that's okay. Obviously, you oppose this, as many of your constituents do. But many of them are also going to say, all right, what do you have as a response? Or what would your plan be? What would you say?
Right. Well, I certainly would think that prohibiting unfunded mandates, if you're going to mandate something on a school district, then give them the money to do it. I think that finding measures that will help school districts hold down their spending, eliminating the prevailing wage, fixing the pension issue, holding the line on unfunded mandates, all of those things will go a long way to help find the money that school districts need for relieving taxpayers of their burden and to stop their spending problem.
If you have questions about this or any other legislative issue, we'll show you some contact information on your screen in a few seconds. I'm Scott Little. This has been Legislative Report with your state representative, Kristin Phillips-Hill.